people in their place. Forget about detectives going around trying to find clues to crime. All the police do is operate on prejudice. That's why it's not an exaggeration to say that far from the police being a reflection of society, the police are the worst of society. So we're here today to stand in solidarity with the women and men who came together to remember Sarah Everard on Clapham Common and were attacked brutally by police. And there's been an inquiry by the police into the police, and surprise, surprise, they say their actions were proportionate. But it was proportionate to take women to the ground and kneel on their backs. But it was proportionate to hit women in the face, as they did at Clapham Common. Of course, none of that was proportionate. And of course, the police are acting with impunity in this country. So they're institutionally racist, they're institutionally sexist, but worse than that, they can't spot Nazis within their ranks. We just heard about Benjamin Hanneman, who lived in Edmonton, probably still does, and operated in Haringey, just up the road from here. A man who was a Nazi, and still is a Nazi. And presumably, he indulged in the canteen culture of the police, a racist and sexist culture, which is why he fitted in quite nicely. That's why they didn't find out about him until there was a leak, which was made by anti-fascists of a Nazi forum where his name appeared. So that Nazi fitted into the Metropolitan Police because they are, as we said earlier, rotten to the core, institutionally racist and institutionally sexist. And we're also here today because of the good people of Bristol who rose up in their thousands. Thousands of young people and others came together to protest against this rotten bill. And they marched on Bridewell Police Station. And they were totally peaceful, but the police were overwhelmed. And because of that, the police decided to attack a peaceful demonstration. And then of course the police get out their narrative first, which is another word for saying their lies first, talking about how they were attacked, how 2 police officers were seriously injured and had broken bones. But it was not until the next day or 2 days afterwards that they admitted that was a pack of lies. But unfortunately, because of the way the mass media works, when it's owned by billionaires, most people in the country probably still think that there were 2 officers seriously injured with broken bones. It was a lie, and they admitted it was a lie, but that's how they operate. We're here to say enough is enough. We fought for our democratic rights, and we will maintain our democratic rights. That's why we say, whose streets? Our streets! 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 I'd like to give a shout out to Exile Extinction Rebellion, and also to BLM, the Black Lives Matter movement, because the other thing the Tories are really scared about is black and white people coming together to make one big fist against racism, institutional racism in this country. And the Tories should know that they have just lit a fuse with their so-called inquiry into racial disparities, which is the biggest cover-up of institutional racism ever, which potentially could set back race relations in this country massively. Doreen Lawrence is absolutely right. The Sewell report is a green light to every little rotten racist in this country, and of course to the big racists in this government, because Boris Johnson still hasn't apologised for all the racial slurs climate catastrophe, whilst they're doing the opposite. They've just scrapped all the grants for renewable energy in your home. They should be doing the opposite and rolling out a massive Green New Deal. That's what humanity needs. The Tories are doing the opposite. They're even talking about opening another coal plant, a coal mine in this country, but they're talking about somehow doing something about climate change. They're not going to do anything. That's why it's down to people like XR to organise resistance, to force change in this country. So that's another reason why they want the police and crime bill on the statutes. And it's a bill that says that we can't make any noise. So if a police officer says you're having a noisy protest, you can't have a protest. So most protests are meant to be noisy. That's why we have megaphones. That's why we have chanting. So if that law is passed, it means that any policeman can shut down any demonstration that they don't like. Worse than that, they're picking on the travellers again. I can see people who can probably remember the Battle of the Beanfield. Who can probably remember the criminal justice bill that became an act. And in that legislation, they have the words repetitive music, and they made it illegal to listen to repetitive music in a warehouse. When they made it illegal for people to travel around the country in their own vehicles, and they smashed up the people in the Beanfield in the southeast of England. I can't remember exactly where it was now, but 1,500 police surrounded men, women and children in the Beanfield, who had the audacity to organise free festivals near Stonehenge. It was no crime, it just didn't fit in with their idea of what family life is meant to be, their idea of what civilised life is meant to be. So if you don't conform, you get a truncheon over your head. That's what they did with the criminal justice bill that became an act, sadly. And now they're trying to do even worse with this crime police and crime bill. That's why we say kill, kill, kill that bill, 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 kill, kill, kill that bill. We're protesting London. There's going to be a big one in central London, bringing together the women's movement, bringing together the black movement, bringing together the movement for social justice in this country, to say we are all going to be out protesting in our thousands tomorrow at Speaker's Corner, I believe, at around 1 o'clock. Jeremy Corbyn's going to be turning up also, which is great. So we don't get some more support from the rest of the Labour Party leadership, but I know there are many good people in the Labour Party still who will also be on that protest. So enough from me, I'm going to hand over
Tony Butterfield from NEU.
to Tony Butterfield from the teachers, the NEU Union, National Education Union.
Tony, it'll be Nick after you.
Hi everybody, I don't quite know where I follow that, but so thanks again, there are great to see so many faces here. This bill obviously covers a vast range of issues that have been outlined there. I'm here to speak on behalf of Islington National Education Union and bring you solidarity to that. Clearly as a trade union, the issue of protest is very, very dear to us. Power does not give up. Employers do not give up. They do not support us with what we are trying to achieve. It comes through protest. That goes right back to the toll puddle martyrs and the issues where we were demonstrating out. They have always tried to suppress union rights, and this bill is a further extension upon that. Some of the more extreme versions of it. We cannot protest outside employers. If those employers try to say we are making too much noise, too much fuss, therefore while the demonstration is illegal, you can just see boardrooms, teachers groups, whatever, the management deciding that we are being too noisy outside and therefore calling a demonstration to be illegal. It is absolutely scandalous that in this country we are not able to protest. So thanks everybody for coming out here today. As trade unions we will be totally against this bill. We have our end-of-year conference coming up this week. Hopefully we will be putting motions condemning this. Like I say, there are so many other issues affecting it, but it certainly is our right on the streets of this country to protest. So thanks everybody for coming out today.
Say who you are.
Thanks for joining the stream, guys. We are at Finsbury Park at the Manor Park gates.
I'm Mick Gilgun, Chair of Islington Trade Union Council. Trade Union Council, Islington Trade Union Council, but speaking on behalf of the injustice which Shrewsbury pickets. Under Shrewsbury, it took 48 years, only just now, a couple of weeks ago, they were cleared. They were charged originally for conspiracy. The truth is, it was conspiracy. It was conspiracy of the judiciary, construction companies, and the whole media. During the Court of Appeal hearing, we heard that witness statements, original witness statements in the original trial, were thrown away and discarded, basically shredded. We also heard about a documentary that was shown during their trial. It's unbelievable now to think that there was a documentary discrediting an official strike action in 1972. It was called Reds Under the Bed. And this is very important. Reds Under the Bed was presented by Richard Whiteley, who some of you might remember used to present Countdown as presenter. It was researched by Woodrow Wyatt, who used to do an anti-trade union column in News of the World. In fact, News of the World was very much in part of this documentary. But deeper to that is the Information Research Department, which is a government department at the time linked to the Foreign Office. Its whole idea was to give anti-propaganda to trade unionists. This programme, Reds Under the Bed, was shown during the trial and discredited the pickets concerned. Ricky Tomlinson served 2 years. This man, Des Warren, served 3. This book, written by Des Warren, is called Key to Myself. And I often think that its Home Secretaries throughout the year have kept Key to Myself, kept the key to Des Warren's cell. There was lawful picketing. No one was arrested. No one was arrested during the picketing. They were picked up because they attended meetings. They were spied upon. And if we bring this to the present day, we see building workers who've been on the blacklist. And if you look at deeper at their files, it all leads to secret police, special branch and MI5. We seek justice for the blacklisted workers support group, environmentalists, and it was absolutely appalling that the police got off this week for what happened to events in Clapham. So we fight this bill, we seek justice, and we stand in solidarity together. First Street! 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 Next is Julie, number 2, also a teacher up in Hackney.
Right, hi, and I'm a teacher from Hackney and I'm also a member of the NEU. I was just going to start off by saying that lots of us, I'm sure, have fought racism all our lives. Okay, I just want to give you a bit of context that 4 times as many Caribbean boys are excluded, 90% of young people are in who are in detention have been excluded. No, that would be amazing. I'm sure I could do it. Okay. 60% of doctors and nurses who've died during the pandemic are from the ethnic minorities. 9 times more black people are likely to be stopped and searched by the police. But I just wanted to give you a bit of what was happening this week. On Wednesday, there was the report on racism in Britain that concluded that there was no institutionalised racism. Only yesterday, I was chatting to some of my students who were talking about their experience at school, the racism that they suffered, about their hair, about their culture, about where they were from, and how awful it's been. And yet, on Wednesday, 10 minutes down the road from Parliament, at Pimlico Academy School, the students staged a sit-in protest. Not only was there a Union Jack flying above their school, but also the school had informed a racist uniform policy where they banned colourful hijabs and afro hairstyles. The afro hairstyles, the reason being apparently because you can't see if you're sitting behind, you can't see the ball. Well, I tell you what, if you're over 6 foot tall, you shouldn't go to school. Well, sorry, hang on one sec. The students had enough. They weren't going to put up with this. They had a sit-in protest and it resulted in a victory. The head teacher was forced to overturn this racist uniform policy. The Union Jack has been taken down. Apparently earlier in the week, the students had actually taken the Union Jack and had burnt it because they just found it intimidating. What does the Union Jack mean for the students to go to the school? It's been absolutely amazing. But not only this, that afternoon, teachers had voted for a no confidence in the head teacher. So it just shows the confidence of the students gave confidence to the teachers to say no more. So the thing is, that this protest, it worked. That is a huge victory for our side. That when you have black and white unity, we can fight racism. And we can fight this bill that attacks the democratic right to fight injustice.
All right.
Kill the bill. Say who you are. I really did. Can you hear me, Finsbury Park? I am here from a trade union, Unite the Union, and I am a woman, and I am an activist, and I don't want to be worried when I come out to just speak, use my voice, that I will be stripped naked practically for the world to see, for doing nothing but raising my voice. Our streets! Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! Women and men, we deserve to be safe. You'll see my banner below me. Loud, proud women got us the vote. There are police at the back. I meet good police, I meet bad police. You're human. I hope that you will respect that we have the right to use our voices. They don't always listen to us. Remember the Iraq War, friends? We tried. They didn't listen, but it won't stop us trying. I go into schools for Unite the Union and I talk to kids about trade unionism. Some of my comrades were in that school in Pimlico 4 times teaching those kids about solidarity and trade unionism. I see you, Gareth. And look at those kids making us proud. We need those kids to find their voices. We need to bring everybody with us. And I just know that the public are watching this, not just us hardened activists. We have to stand together. Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! I hope the police here listening today will
getting more silence, you can spread out a little bit more. That'd be really good.
Okay, great.
Although the government is packing us into school classrooms with no social distancing, so slight contradiction, but there we are. Maybe they don't really care about our health, and they care more about stopping protests. Just to continue where people have left off, and whilst other people are thinking of something to say, come up if you want to say something. This is a speak out, so by all means come and say your piece. And to remind Tony Sewell, so I've got to get it off my chest, it makes me so angry, as Judy McAfee was saying a bit earlier, some of the stats about the level of institutional racism in this country. The fact that the Windrush scandal only has 2 mentions in passing in a 258-page report. Why do they ignore Windrush? Because it's an example of gross institutional racism. It is the definition of institutional racism. But they allow people born in this country, or have lived in this country for decades, to be deported to places they knew nothing about. People that went on holiday to Jamaica and other islands who were refused re-entry to this country. People who had to prove that they actually lived in this country legally, but they had to come up with documents like pay slips from 1970. Who keeps their pay slips from 1970, let alone last month, if you've got a pay slip and you still have a job in Tory Britain? That is the levels of the institutional racism. And one of the most staggering things, I think there's a documentary out on about it very soon, is the fact that in this country, if you're a black woman, you are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth. What? And how do we explain that? Are we making it up, Tony Sewell? Are we making it up, Tory party? No, we're not. And I said they've lit a fuse. People are absolutely livid with this cover-up of a report that tries to deny that racism exists. That's why we're here partly today, because I can see the banners of Black Lives Matter being held by black and white people. And all these issues are interlinked. Sarah Everard is the granddaughter of a Jamaican woman. They don't talk about that in the media, because they like to show real connections that were all ultimately related and how stupid racism is. But that is the reality. It is totally intersectional in the sense that race and class go together. But in that duplicitous report from Sewell, he tries to pit class against race, when actually the 2 things are part and parcel of the same thing. And what a cheek for this Tory government to pretend that they care about working class people. What a lie! It is the big lie. The Tory party is based on the idea that only a few can succeed, but the others who are poor because they're stupid. That is the Tory idea. That is the essence of Toryism. Tony Sewell is a Tory. That's why for him, if there's some people that can do well in the education system, it means that the others are just stupid. It's nothing to do with the system. Nothing to do with the way you're taught. Nothing to do with what you're taught. When I went to school in the 1970s, there was not a single black person anywhere in the curriculum unless you wanted to talk about slavery and the British Empire. I wonder black kids feel they've got no home for them in the education system. And it's still like that fundamentally. Despite all the good work being done by anti-racist teachers, the teachers' unions, with no help for the sub of society. That's why the rebellion, already mentioned, by the students of Pimlico Academy is so inspiring. We're for the young people. See that all over the country, black and white together. I remember in the summer talking to white kids, talking about how when they went back to school, when they were going to be organising to decolonise the curriculum. Those battles are still going on, and they're spreading, and the anger at the Tony Sewell report is going to bring them closer to fruition. So I'm going on for a bit, so I haven't been told who's speaking next. Our fella's speaking next. Right, okay, so. And before we do that, whose streets? Whose streets? Whose streets? Whose streets? Whose streets? Whose streets?
Let's hold that a minute, Phil. Sorry, Gary, I'm going to clean that for you. Please don't get my paper.
Don't worry, I'll worry on it.
Phil's already had COVID, but we're taking it super safe anyway. We've got the antibodies.
Just wait a minute.
Yeah, just hold that one in there. I'll hold it for you.
Now, and then it will be Joe.
Comrades, I'm Phil. I'm the president of the RMT, London Transport Region. I'm here to bring solidarity from all workers in the RMT on London Underground, from cleaners, train ops, engineers and station staff. And here we are, over a year into COVID. After all that time, what have the government tried to do during COVID? They tried to envisage these thoughts that we're all in it together. But the truth is, we're not all in it together, and we never have been all in it together. When they try and envisage these thoughts of the spirit of the Blitz, remember these images of working class people hiding in the London Underground tunnels from the Blitz, that was actually against the law. It was illegal to hide in underground tunnels, and it was only people protesting and direct action that changed that. Under this bill, then protests could be illegal. Remember, it was only here not long ago, it was International Women's Day, and the way the government and capitalists try to press that off now is something like it's International Women's Day, buy something nice for a woman. But they hide the true history of International Women's Day. It's actually from strikes in the garment industry in New York, where women were major demands. It was women in Russia walking from factory to factory that started the Russian Revolution. They don't tell us this. And under this bill, any protest like that will be against the law. They don't tell us the first woman elected to Parliament was an Irish Republican, Sinn Féin MP. They don't tell us this. They hide history. Remember, we would still be fighting for LGBT rights if it was not for the right to protest. There's not one politician from a mainstream party in this land that will say anything bad about Martin Luther King, because in his death he tried to get rid of how dangerous he was by making him a saint. But Martin Luther King organised the March on Washington. 300,000 people marching against racism, and this bill will make anything like that against the law. And the truth is that nothing that has genuinely changed society for working class people has come through Parliament. It has all come through protest and direct action. And that is why they want to stop the right to protest. And where will it end, comrades? Where will it end? Because they've already told us that they want to change the rights to strike, and we will have to, as train workers and rail workers, even when we go on strike, supply a minimum amount of transport to get people to work. That is something we can never do. We cannot ban the right to strike, and if they get away with this bill, no doubt about it, they'll try and ban the right to picket. Absolutely guaranteed. And I tell you what, comrades, I've just spoke about loads of things historically, but think about our lifetime. Think about the Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4, Hillsborough, Orgrave, Shrewsbury, the Blacklist, and more recently, undercover police. Looking at female activists, forming relationships with them, having children with them, while they were undercover working, and then disappearing from their lives so they can spy on trade unionists. It's absolutely right that we protest all their things, and we do it without the fear of arrest, because the only people that should be arrested are the people responsible for their crimes. And that amounts to the state, and it amounts to the people that are the armed militia of the state, and that is the police. That is their role. So we must fight this bill as working class people, because protest, as I say, is the only thing that ever wins games. Solidarity.
Hi, yeah, my name's Jo. I'm coming here today from Islington Unison. We're the local government trade union branch, and we come here today to bring massive solidarity to every single one of you protesting against this disgusting bill that will just curtail our freedoms even more. I stand here today in solidarity with the Pimlico student strikers who showed us the way to fight back. I stand here today in solidarity with the women of Clapham Common who felt the real police on their backs when they protested. And I stand here today in solidarity with the family of Nicole Smallman and Bieber Henry, two black women who the police took selfies next to their bodies. It's disgusting the way they treated that family. And I'm in solidarity with them because Black Lives Matter. I'm in solidarity today in our branch with all our black sisters, our Muslim sisters, our Asian sisters who are targeted day in, day out by racists and not protected by the police one bit. And I just have to say, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, there's a trial taking place right now in the United States, but it's the trial of Derek Chauvin. It's always called the trial of George Floyd. George Floyd is not on trial. Derek Chauvin is on trial. The police are on trial. Racism is on trial, and we have to back Black Lives Matter. As a trade unionist today, I stand here because for the last 10 years, we have been battered by austerity. Austerity that 10 years ago we were told was an economic necessity. We always knew it was a political choice. They chose to cut our services, to line the pockets of the rich, to store their money in offshore tax havens and keep the money away from working class people. We saw during the corona crisis, the money is there. But I'll tell you what's going to happen next. They're going to try and make us pay. They're going to try and make us pay for every single thing we've had for the last year. And we have to stand up as trade unionists, as community activists, as anti-racists, and we have to say that we will fight this government. We will fight to bring back our services. We will fight to stop this bill, and we will join together to make sure that the exploitation and the oppression of normal people in this country comes to an end. This is why they want this bill. This government knows what's coming. They know what's coming. Pimlico is a small taste of it. But I'll tell you what, those students are inspiring. And they inspire us, just like the Black Lives Matter movement inspire us. The British trade unions need to be full square behind every single protest to kill this bill. These are our streets, it's our country, it's our democracy. This is about us, not about the tiny 1% at the top. Kill this bill.
Hear me?
Yes.
Yes, is that coming through loud and clear? My name is Fred Copeland, and you see I'm quite old. I'm not even daring to stand up there on the chair because I think I'm too heavy. But I just want to say I stand shoulder to shoulder with everybody here in my opposition to this bill. This bill is a mammoth bill, and it's imposing draconian restrictions on our right to protest, a right enshrined in
the Human Rights Act and the European Convention on Human Rights, and it's going to drastically impede our right to protest. The government, this Tory government, has already had 3 pieces of legislation that are rotten. One, the Covert Human Intelligence Sources Act now, that's passed into law, the CHIS Act, which allows undercover police to get immunity from doing all sorts of illegal actions, in the Overseas Operations Bill, which allows the military to escape prosecution, and now this bill. Now, Mick Gilligan spoke to us earlier about the 24. I've read a bit of this bill. I'm a retired lawyer. I tell you, it's a real mess. Quite apart from being a attempt to restrict our right to protest, there is a hell of a scope within the law, within the sections, it seems to me, for legal challenge. But don't rely on that. Don't rely on that. Mick Gilligan told us it took 24 years for the Shrewsbury 24 convictions to be quashed. I was reading it took 11 years for provisions in relation to a police practice called kettling to go through the courts fully. So the bill is a real mess. I assure you that. It's not straightforward. It tries to be draconian, but it's a mess. It needs to be scrapped. Now, I'm a long-standing member of the Labour Party, and some of you will be in the Labour Party here, and some of you will be in other parties, and some of you will be in no parties. But what I say is that we need to stand united on this. Sometimes I feel that division is the original sin of those of us who stand on the left, and we must not have division on this. We must remain united and stop this bill. The government, I think, is rocky on it. It's not going to, I think, to pass it, I may be wrong on this, pass into law before the autumn. So I think there is a period of time, and we must all stand united and protest against it, and perhaps, just perhaps, we can force a change from the streets on this. I certainly hope so.
Introduce yourself, George.
Yeah, squeeze this side and you're good to go.
Then you, Andy.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, comrades, for coming out this afternoon. My name's George Binet, and I'm the Trade Union Liaison Officer for Hackney North and Stoke Newington Labour Party. And I bring solidarity greetings from our Member of Parliament, Diane Abbott. As I'm sure you're aware, the Labour Party in Parliament is finally opposing this legislation. But it took the shocking images of the policing of the vigil in memory of Sarah Everard at Clapham Common to actually force Sir Keir Starmer and Labour's front bench off the fence.
I didn't understand that. Sorry.
That is shocking and it is shameful.
I think we're going to be...
Because the reality, for those of us who can remember the 1980s, is that the police don't need legislation of this sort to launch an all-out offensive on the trade union and labour movement. Some of us saw firsthand the reality of the policing of picket lines and mining communities during the great National Union of Mine Workers strike of 1984-1985. I personally was arrested and battered on the picket lines at Wapping during the print workers' strike of 1986 and 1987. Sadly, proof positive that the police are most surely not on the side of workers in struggle. Just a few months ago, the Tories, supposedly out of this earnest concern for public health, were keen to bar all picketing. There was successful legal action by the Unite Trade Union to actually allow pickets to gather outside a bus manufacturing complex in Yorkshire. But time and time again, you will see peaceful picket lines, and yet the police will be called at the slightest pretext, whether the COVID regulations or some alleged petty offence. Now, in terms of building a movement
to resist and defeat this proposed legislation, demonstrations like today are important. Because even if somehow there is a parliamentary majority mustered to kill the bill, ultimately it will take a movement on the streets and on the picket lines to resist and defeat the attempts to stifle dissent, to stifle effective protest, and to stifle effective industrial action. And hopefully, in building a movement to defeat this legislation, we can begin to build the kind of resistance that will be necessary across the labour movement, black and white, African, Caribbean, Asian and European and British, to defeat what will be an employer's offensive and a new round of austerity unless we get our act together to stop it long before there's another general election in this country. Kill the bill, solidarity.
This is the first time I've been in a protest since a year.
I've been on picket lines twice this week.
Hello, my name is Andy. I'm from Islington Trades Council. I bring you 2 minutes of solidarity from Islington Trades Council. And the whole purpose of a trades council is to gather trade unions in an area, obviously this case Islington, and to show solidarity. That is what we do, and that's what I'm bringing to you and I'm asking you to do as well. Solidarity not just with trade unions in struggle, and we need plenty of that, and we're seeing more and more conflicts as employers and government turn the screws on people. Now, during COVID, the government and the employers and the right-wing media have made every attempt to divide people, whether that be old and young, black and white, city and country, ill and not ill, rich and poor. In every way they've tried to divide people, and they're continuing with this now because they know if they're going to continue to govern the way they are doing, there's going to be social unrest, there's going to be conflict. So they need laws that are going to help them do that, and this is what we're seeing at the moment. And the best thing that we can do is this sort of thing. Join protests, join solidarity organisations, join political parties, take part in fighting for your rights. This is at this point we've got nothing else we can do. We must do this. And just a final note to say that, there was one other thing I was going to say, sorry. The way trade unions organise is so important, but we're now facing a world of people working in the gig economy. And that means very often new ways of organising and also new ways of showing solidarity and being very flexible in the way we do that. So as trade unionists and as others, please show solidarity with very often young people working in the gig economy in very difficult circumstances. We need to really escalate this one. And just a final word to say that as well as this protest, there is going to be a big demonstration on the 26th of June organised by the People's Assembly, so please aim for that one. That will be a big one. Cheers.
Can people respect social distancing? Can it kind of move back a bit and
Just
put your arms out? And if you're touching someone with your arms, you're too close.
Sorry,
we only got a couple of more speakers.
do that.
Anyway, let's take a photo of it and know this behave. We'll keep it safe. Thank you, officer. Right. Hi everyone, I'm Jem Errol from Diane Abbott Community Centre. Thank you for providing us a platform to speak today on a very important issue. The bill will surely set a precedent to build an authoritarian rule unless there is collective action against it. We can only change such bills and anti-democratic rules if we are on the streets, making ourselves heard against those who make these rules and swaying public opinion. We must make it clear that this government is no advocate of democracy. I am from a Turkish and Kurdish community centre, and naturally we follow the political development in Turkey. We have seen government dismantle the fundamentals of democracy
and what is left unchanged. It will have no shame in attacking protesters, claiming that the police force were the ones that were attacked, not allowing vigils, and using violence against women to disperse crowds, silencing and physically attacking journalists. These are the scenes that we have become so accustomed to seeing in Turkey. Of course, there is no democracy in Turkey, but what we have witnessed on the streets and the statements that have been made in favour of this establishment in the UK over the past few months is very similar to what we have witnessed and will continue to see so in Turkey for the past few decades. This is the reason for today. If people like us are not on the streets today, we do not call the government to account, if we do not struggle against injustice and inequality, if we do not challenge the status quo, we will see the erosion of democracy in this country because Boris Johnson is no advocate of democracy. In fact, he finds protests and gatherings like this a nuisance to society, and if he had the public on his side, he would ban all protests. It is important to ask why the government has introduced this bill now. It is because there is more discontent against the system, the inequality between the rich and poor is growing, the pandemic has exposed the weaknesses in this system, and it is always targeting those that are the least well off. We are going to see a reoccurrence of what happened during the 2008-9 financial crash, with the worst off in society paying for the affairs of the rich and the 1%. The anger towards the government and its system is set to grow, and this bill criminalises those who take action against this government. Under this bill, Gandhi would be sentenced for causing annoyance with his peaceful persistence. Nelson Mandela would be charged for speaking above the decibel limit set by this bill. Those two important figures, in fact, remind us of the importance of demonstrations and popular campaigns for peace, human rights, and democracy. Without collective action, injustices would continue unchallenged, and people would lose confidence in the democratic process by which injustices are changed. You may remember this quote from Tony Benn, that there are two ways in which people are controlled. First of all, frighten people, and secondly, demoralize them. Are we frightened? No! Are we demoralized? No! It's the same each time with progress. First they ignore you, then they say you are mad, then they say you are dangerous, then there is a pause. And then you can't find anyone that disagrees with you. Think of Vietnam, think of Afghanistan, Iraq, and how public opinion changed because of collective action we took, which stopped government from getting away from the atrocities that they committed. The beauty is on the streets, it's our streets, and to stop the state building the foundations of a police state, we will continue to be on the streets for peace, for democracy, and to kill this bill. Thank you.
That's easier than
Hello, I'd like to thank you all so much for turning up today. My name is Jan Nielsen, and back in 1979, I was one of the organisers of the Reclaim the Night in Leeds and in London. And I need one of those placards that I've seen so many of my sisters carrying. I can't believe I'm still protesting this shit. But we are, because we live in a society where sexism is part of the DNA of capitalism and the greed for profits. enough. That's why it's happening. Not because our voice is heard and the government understands. They hear our voice and they don't want to hear it anymore. So I want us all today to pledge that in the coming months we are going to fight this bill on the streets. I want you all to promise, because I am, when the nurses protest against receiving 1% pay rise, these are mostly the women who have dealt with the shit because Boris Johnson couldn't make the country safe. Women, and I want to make this clear, women have held the whole bloody project together, from every council estate to every street in Britain. And when they offer women in the health service 1%, we say no, and we will protest with you. I'm also going to be on the BLM protests on the 23rd of May to mark with respect George Floyd and to demand that the police who killed him in cold blood are jailed. So we will be on the streets with our black brothers and sisters on the 23rd of May. I will be with the People's Assembly March in its thousands, demanding a fairer Britain. And I will also be with XR and the climate protests in November, when the big bosses of all the countries across the world are going to come to Great Britain and they're going to pretend, they are going to lie to us that the world is greener now, and they are trying to cure it, the problem. We know they can't, we know they won't, and that's why our right to protest is sacrosanct. There's no democracy if you can't raise your voice. So all of us, we're going to kill this bill, and I'm glad, I hope, some good people in Parliament support us. But I don't bloody care, because all the big victories for our side, whether it's the suffragettes, whether it's the black civil rights march campaigns, all of the big changes, the best changes in our society have taken place when ordinary people like us rise up together, join in solidarity and say, it's not just, these are not just our streets, of course they are, but we want the whole bloody cake, and we're fed up of these people who use race, use gender to divide and separate us. On this bill, we are united. We are going to kill it dead.
Our streets! Our streets! Our streets! Our streets! Our streets! Say his name! George Floyd! 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 Someone from Cardiff BLM rang me last night and said, don't forget about Mahmoud Hassan. Hopefully people have heard about Mahmoud Hassan. He ended up in the Cardiff police station, was beaten up by Cardiff police and was let out and died at home because of that beating by the police in Wales. There have been 3 other cases in Wales. Another man was killed by the police in Wales a few weeks before him, Mohib Bashir. A black woman had audacity to fight back when she was subjected to a racist attack. Now she faces being hauled up in front of the court despite being attacked by 2 men. and a black boy, was pushed into a river and drowned. And that follows the case of Secretary Abbott, who was also pushed into a river and drowned. So that's 4 killings or 4 incidents in Wales. People in Wales suspect that there are cells of fascists in the police in that country because of the levels of racism in the police force. And so now, because of the protests in Cardiff, they've been raiding the homes of BLM members and others in Cardiff and in other parts of Wales. There's a deliberate campaign of harassment, a deliberate campaign against the people who've been organising the protests. I'm not trying to scare people, but we really are up against a government that is getting more repressive. A government that wants to stamp out our right to protest. That's why I hope to see everybody here on the protest tomorrow. If you can and you're not shielding, well, you wouldn't be here if you're shielding, I guess. So I hope to see you all at Speaker's Corner tomorrow. And as Jen pointed out, all the other protests are up and coming. And let's remember Sarah Everard. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. And justice for Sarah means that cop has to go down for a very long time. But more than that, it means that the police who are institutionally misogynist have to change. They have to be forced to change. That means there needs to be targets for sorting out domestic violence. That means when a woman says she's being stalked, they do something about it. That means when a woman is raped, the man goes to prison. All of these things are measurable, as they say in management speak. And we demand that the police end their institutional sexism and racism. Whose streets? Our streets! 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 See everybody on the protest tomorrow and all the other protests to come. And for the big revolution that's coming this summer. It's going to be a summer to remember. And we're going to make sure this government remembers.
Who's this one? It did. Jan. Great speech from Jan. Sorry, comrade.
Is there anything you'd like to say?
I think we have a government that is getting more repressive because they know that they've have the worst economy in the OECD nations because of the pandemic. And that is because of the policies of this government by not taking the pandemic and COVID seriously in the first place. And because of that, that means that mass unemployment is coming. But there's going to be even worse inequality. And that inequality is already seen in the fact that poor working class people have been the ones that have died the most in this crisis. And inside of that pandemic crisis, it's been black and minority ethnic people who have died. People like the Filipino people that no one talks about, the nurses in the NHS who have been dying. For 60% of black and minority ethnic nurses and doctors who were the people that were dying at the beginning of the pandemic. Those things are institutionalized racism, just like the institutionalized sexism in our society. And the government knows that we're going to fight back against both the inequalities. They say they're in favor of working class people, they're not. They're the people who are making working class people poorer. So we're going to unite the working class people and all the working class people, the black people, the Muslim people, all to come together as one fist to show this government and to show the police that we are the many and they are the few. This is why we'll be at Speaker's Corner tomorrow for a big protest in London and a part of a day of action all over the UK against the police crime and justice bill that tries to outlaw our right to protest. They are happy to talk about China where there are no democratic rights, but what about Britain? They're happy to talk about Hong Kong, but what about Britain? What about our right to protest? So we're going to maintain our right to protest, whatever it takes.
Thank you very much. And,
thank you.
Just one question. Tomorrow, what time?
I think it's 1 o'clock, but keep an eye on social media.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
All right, guys. Listen, thank you very much for joining in. This is Subject Access's stream, but it's not Subject Access, obviously. He's a lot taller, right? I'm actual interview, so I'm helping out. Yeah, Subject Access is filming a guy on a crane. I'm filming some people here, right? I think it has come to an end, and yeah, people are naturally dispersing. There have been police here. They've been here the whole time, but they've just stayed on the perimeter and they haven't really engaged. They did engage one time, one officer, but that was just to remind them to social distance. All right, I'm sure you guys all saw that. So we are near Manor House Tube Station. It's the Finsbury Park. Yeah, the people have dispersed fairly quickly. How do you think it went today?
Alright.
You went alright? You seem happy about it.
Pardon?
I mean, you seem happy about it.
Everyone's left. We're leaving.
Is there anything that you would do differently?
No.
Nothing at all?
Is there anything you think we should do differently?
I'm not sure. I'm just a camera person. I'm not a police officer. It seems to have gone very well, right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
It seems to have gone very smoothly.
It has. It's been lovely. Nice and Friday.
Michael, it's called like technology. Yeah, it's like testing out today. How did it go? No, subject. Because this is like you know, a unity thing, multiculturalism and stuff. I have the immunity shield. That's what I call it, the diversity shield. I can do whatever I wish. No one will do anything to me in fear of being called a racist. So I can do literally whatever I want right now. Hello, young man. How do you think the event went today?
Well, I've only just arrived, so I pretty much missed it. But there's more going on at Parliament Square apparently later at 5 or Downing Street, one of the two. So
Hold on one second.
might just go to that.
Okay.
See what's going on.
Parliament Square, possibly. I told you guys, I have the diversity shield in these events. Right, no one will do anything to me. Hello guys, hi. I'm streaming live on a YouTube channel for Subject Access. Would you like to say a few words about the event?
I don't think so for me, so.
No?
Yeah,
Nothing?
no, so.
Just how it went?
No.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, they never want to talk. Never want to talk. Yeah, but they don't want to talk. That's the problem. They never want to talk. This man's got the right idea. He's got his lunch. I'll show you the Black Lives Matter table. So you can give a donation of 50 pence or some multiple, and you get a badge, and you can sign your name to kill the bill. And there is literature available as well.
I want to double check. No, are you doing that? I'm looking, yeah, I saw you.
No. He wouldn't normally be here. I don't know why he is actually.
With masks on.
But he wouldn't normally be at such an event.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why when I saw him over there, and I thought, I think that's the, like, I'll come and check. Because I'm supposed to he's going to pass my phone number. He's going to pass my phone number
Hello guys. Hi, I'm streaming live on YouTube for a channel, Subject Access. Would you like to say a few words about the event, how it went?
Yeah, I thought the protest went really well today. There was a mix of different campaigns that came together over the Kill the Bill issue. I think that's what's really great about it. There's no organisation behind it, but it brought together climate change issues, the Reclaim the Streets protests, Black Lives Matter, and you know that's really what we're going to need in order to fight back against this bill. We need unity, we need mass working class action in order to fight the bill and push back against the police and the state.
Sure. So, what do you feel is the best course of action to take? I mean, as a nation to do that. Obviously, we need everyone to get involved, right?
Yeah.
People have different beliefs, political beliefs, whatever.
Yeah. So I suppose in order to get the mass movement, you want to make it as broad as possible. So you don't want to exclude people from that, depending on their views. So you want to make sure everybody's involved. Whether you don't look at the small differences, you look at the wider issues that unites us. And right now, when it comes to Kill the Bill, we're all under threat because of this bill, and we need to recognise that and show people that we all have a common cause to fight back against this bill. And I suppose it's a process really to convince people about that, and it takes time, but I think we are beginning to see the beginning of a mass movement against the bill.
Excellent. And tomorrow there's a protest at Speaker's Corner.
Yeah. So there's one Speaker's Corner tomorrow with Jeremy Corbyn and stuff like that, some other Labour speakers, but there's also one on Sunday. I think Sisters Uncut have called that, but I'm sure there'll be many more until this bill's laid to rest.
It does seem like that. Listen, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, guys. I think I'm going to end the stream. Everyone's pretty much dispersed. Just making their way away from here. There may be something going on in Parliament Square. That's what I heard. So if the stream comes on, it'll be there. So thank you very much for tuning in. I am Actual Interview, streaming on behalf of Subject Access here. I have a channel, you can check that. The moderator's here. Please do the moderator things. If you wish to donate, you can donate to Subject Access. You can subscribe to his Twitter channel, and you can watch his other stream if he's still streaming it. Okay guys, I'm going to end it. Thank you very much, and see you next time.